This is nutmeg, a spice that needs no introduction. You might find it sold in the shell like this, but more likely you're going to find the kernel that's inside of it. Or even more likely, you will see it sold as a powder. What you might not know is that nutmeg is actually a seed. And in nature, that seed is surrounded by a bright red covering known as an aril. The arils are actually dried to make a completely different spice called mace. Not to be confused with this kind of mace. Mace is not quite as well known as nutmeg is, but it is a common ingredient in a variety of different spice mixtures, including garam masala, ras el hanout, and curry powder. But it doesn't end there. There is actually a third product that comes from the nutmeg tree, nutmeg fruit. Worldwide, this is the least popular part of the three. However, in the areas that nutmeg trees grow, nutmeg fruit is arguably even more popular than the spices that lie inside of it. And there's one more layer, a layer that you cannot see, because as interesting as nutmeg may be as an ingredient, that's nothing compared to the surprising and surprisingly dark history of how it ended up in your cupboard. Nutmeg was literally worth its weight in gold. Yet despite of this, for a long time, the location of where this spice grew was a closely guarded secret. Today, I'll be going on a worldwide adventure to discover everything that I can about nutmeg. And in order to do this right, I am going to go to the top secret location of where nutmeg originated. This is the Newark Airport International Terminal. It's got the vibe of like a dead mall, but, you know, usually gets you there. Greetings everybody, I am at the Newark International Airport in New Jersey, which is considered to be the worst airport in the United States. I fly out of here all the time and it's alright. It's not that bad, but it gets bad. When it's bad, it's really bad. But the reason why I'm here is that I found a direct flight to Malaysia. Yes, I'm going to Malaysia again, but you might wonder, is Malaysia where nutmeg is from originally? No. Nutmeg is from a very remote part of the world, very difficult to get to, and honestly, at the time I film this, I am not entirely sure that I'm going to be able to get there. So to cover all my bases, I want to go to Malaysia first, and then head over to these remote islands. Nutmeg does not grow in a lot of places around the world. It's got to be in a very specific kind of area, and this is one place that you can go that you can get to without a whole lot of trouble. So, we're going there first. In order to find fresh nutmeg fruit, I went to an area where it grows, the island of Penang in western Malaysia. Nutmeg fruit isn't something you'll find everywhere throughout Malaysia. In fact, you won't even find it much in Penang. This fruit is used very locally, so in order to find it, I went to a nutmeg growing region. In the small town of Balik Pulau, nutmeg fruit and its products are for sale everywhere. I saw the candy for sale at stores, the juice was on pretty much every restaurant's menu, and even just walking down the street, I saw people drying mace in their front yards. My first stop on this trip was the Nature Fruit Farm Resort.
My name is Denny. This is our farm, and we grow durian, jackfruit, cempedak, and nutmeg true. I do my own products, essential oil and flora water with the nutmeg. When the fruit is ready, it will turn to yellow in color. This is green, not shade. Okay, let me find some for you. You see this?
Oh, that looks yellow.
Yes,
Is that the color you're looking for?
Yeah, do you want to pick it?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Be careful the latex.
Okay. Oh, popped right off. So I think that
Yes.
one's ready to go.
Yeah.
So sometimes nutmeg is split open. What happens to the fruit once it's split?
No, we just throw it away.
Just throw it away.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna go bad.
Yeah.
So once it splits, it's getting like overripe.
Yes.
I see. Picking the fruit by hand works well enough for small trees, but nutmeg trees can get pretty big. So for those, we had to pull out the artillery.
You can try?
Let me give it a shot. Yeah. So I
take
see
it.
one back here.
Yes.
That one looks yellow.
Yes, yeah, that is good.
Okay. I've got it in the basket.
Yes.
So I just pull it towards me.
Yeah. You can take it.
I got another one. Okay, we've got a bonus.
One also.
All right. So I got a nice haul. Before we get too far, I want to try the fruit just on its own. No, normally it's not eaten this way, but sometimes people do. So we'll see what this is like. I'm just going to cut a little slice off. It's very powerful, but it's not bad. It does give me a little bit of dry mouth, but the flavor of that, it tastes like ground nutmeg, only fresh, if that makes sense. And it's also very citrusy, like biting into a piece of lemon rind, like lemon rind and nutmeg together. Not bad. Despite its popularity in this region, nutmeg isn't originally from Malaysia. And the reason why it's in Malaysia is actually really interesting. These days, you can get dozens of spices from all around the world at a dollar store. So it's hard to imagine that at one point in time, some of the seasonings that we use every day were literally worth their weight in gold. Spices were once so valuable that they were often even used as currency. During the Roman Empire, it was common for workers to be paid in salt. The word salary actually comes from sal, the Latin word for salt. In the 15th century, precious metals became so scarce in Europe that black peppercorns became a commonly accepted form of payment. The legal term peppercorn rent comes from this time as well. It means making an insubstantial payment as a formality. For instance, if your parents sell you their car for $1, they are charging you a peppercorn payment. Or your parents are really bad with money.
Because of this, in the past, some official contracts would literally have the low cost of only one peppercorn listed as payment. Nutmeg and mace were even more valuable than pepper. To give an idea of just how valuable they were, here are some figures that I found. On an English price list from 1265, I found that 1 pound of mace was worth the price of not 1, not 2, but 3 sheep. Another English price list from 1350 lists that 28 ounces of mace was worth an entire cow. On a German price list from 1393, 1 pound of nutmeg was worth a whopping 7 fat oxen. Not scrawny ones, fat ones. So why were spices so valuable? Do people really care so much about flavor that they'd be willing to spend exorbitant amounts of money just to season their food? Well, yeah, people who could afford spices used them for flavor, but there was more to it than that. In times of food scarcity, when food was rotting, spices would be used to cover up the bad taste. Fun fact, mulled wine was originally created in order to hide the taste of spoiled wine. Besides just hiding the spoiled flavor of food and drink, the antibacterial and insecticidal properties of some spices could actually help prevent spoiling. Owning and using spices was a symbol of wealth. In some cultures, one's worth was actually determined by the amount of pepper that they owned. Imagine living in that world, having friends over, and then grinding a little pepper on their food. That was the ultimate subtle flex. Using spices was also fashionable. If that sounds hard to believe, just know that nutmeg is a key ingredient in pumpkin spice. Like it or not, that shit has been trending for centuries. Nutmeg in particular contains myristicin, and that was, and for some still is, used as an hallucinogenic. Spices were valued for their medicinal benefits, either consumed or mixed into salves and then applied externally. During a time when people didn't bathe all that often, spices were used as a perfume. Typically, they were put into small containers called pomanders and then worn on the body. To go back to medicine for a minute, it was commonly believed that bad smells were the cause of many diseases. This is called the miasma theory. Because of this, the pleasant smell of spices were believed to provide protection. Another fun fact, for this reason, plague masks look the way that they do because the beak was actually stuffed with flowers and strong-smelling spices. While we're on the oh-so-pleasant topic of the plague, this horrible disease has even more to do with nutmeg. To learn more about it, let's take a quick detour to the Czech Republic.
It's the morning in Prague right now, you can see behind me, and I'm walking over to the train station to go about an hour to the town of Kutná Hora. So I'm in Kutná Hora. Gotta really be careful to get the letters on that in the right order. Kutná Hora. And I'm heading to the Sedlec ossuary, one of the biggest ossuaries in the world. There's supposed to be like 40,000 people that are all plague victims. Kostis, that means ossuary. Yeah, I guess this area was so popular for burials because supposedly they took dirt from the holy site Golgotha and they scattered it over the burial grounds here. So everybody wanted to be buried inside this area.
During the 14th century, over a third of the population of Europe died from the plague. This time appropriately became known as the Black Death. Some estimate the number of people who died to be as many as 200 million. The Sedlec ossuary gives a glimpse into this period of time. It was once a small burial site, but during the Black Death, so many bodies were brought there that it had to be expanded. But it still wasn't enough, and soon the site was overflowing with bodies. In the 16th century, a monk was tasked to make the Sedlec ossuary more presentable. The Sedlec ossuary is just one of many sites throughout the world that are filled with plague victims. These sites are often meant to act as a memento mori, a place to reflect on one's mortality. But in learning about history, sites like this can also help you see the mortality of others. It is easy to hear that thousands of people were killed by something, but it is another thing to see the evidence of that.
Okay, so that was absolutely insane. It's just beyond words. There are so many people buried in there, or so many people, like, their skeletons arranged in there, that it's just, I can't even, like, really process it.
The Black Death decimated Europe. People were desperate for something to save them from this horrible disease, and many believed that nutmeg was that cure. The plague was caused by Yersinia pestis, a bacteria that was carried by fleas. Did nutmeg actually cure the plague? No, but it might have helped in a small way. It does have an antibacterial property to it that theoretically could have helped prevent the spread of plague-causing bacteria. And nutmeg does contain a natural insecticide that theoretically could have helped repel fleas. So good news, right? No. Yes, the bacteria was being carried by fleas, but those fleas were being carried by rats. And those rats were carried by spice traders. Ironically, merchants that were believed to be bringing life-saving nutmeg across the globe in order to help people with the plague were inadvertently spreading the plague as they went. Whether or not nutmeg was helpful, trade was one of the main reasons why the Black Death killed so many people. Either way, there was a lot of demand for nutmeg, especially throughout Europe. Europeans wanted it badly, and spice traders knew that. So naturally, they greatly inflated the cost. You may wonder why Europeans didn't just go and get the spices themselves. They had boats. Well, here's the problem. The location of where nutmeg was originating from was a closely guarded secret among spice traders. It wasn't until the 16th century that the first European nation finally figured out where the nutmeg was coming from. And to find out more about how this happened, we are next going to go to the city of Melacca in Malaysia.
I am in Melacca. This is a very popular tourist area here in Malaysia, and it is popular for a lot of reasons. There's a ton of historic buildings here, a lot of incredible food, a lot of shopping, a ton of museums. There's a lot of cool things to check out if you come to Melacca. There are communities here, several communities of Malay, Indian, Chinese, and Eurasian cultures. So it's a very diverse place. However, it actually used to be even more diverse. Believe it or not, in the 16th century, there were so many different cultures here that people say that over 84 languages were spoken here in Melacca. Nutmeg is not originally from Malaysia. However, here in Melacca, this area played a very important part in how nutmeg was going from where it originated to the rest of the world. This, everybody, is the Strait of Melacca, and this waterway was huge. Sand just blew in my throat. This waterway was incredibly important for trade because this waterway connected East Asia to the rest of the world. So all those spices, they were coming through this strait for centuries. This is how people were getting that oh so fashionable, oh so trendy, oh so plague curing spice. It's coming from there. So far I have not told you where nutmeg was coming from because I've been building suspense. Well, now is the time. I'm going to tell you where it's from. It's from over there, okay? It's from that side of the Strait of Melacca. So the nutmeg traders would come from there. They would go down the Strait of Melacca. And if they wanted to take their nutmeg to Europe, they would keep going, okay? But they didn't want to do that because that would take a really, really long time, okay? So they would hang a right and they would go down this waterway. This here is the Melacca River. And we're gonna go there next. Now, why this river is so significant is that this is where the trade would happen, okay? So it's kind of like set up like a floating market, I believe. I know what you're thinking, that's great, but what does that have to do with nutmeg? Well, one of the traders that would come here, down the Strait of Melacca, and then down this river, and then trade over there, was coming directly from the top secret location of where nutmeg was originating. So this river was the first stop in a long journey that would bring nutmeg to the rest of the world. In 1511, something happened here in Melacca that would change the history of this city and the world forever. Because in 1511, a man named Afonso de Albuquerque ordered an attack on Melacca. Afonso wanted to accomplish three things: spread Christianity, kill a lot of Muslims, of whom he was very prejudiced against, and also control the spice trade. How he hoped to do this was by seizing major ports and waterways, like this one over here. 1 year before he attacked Melacca, he attacked Goa in India. And that's why if you go to Goa today, there's a huge Portuguese influence over there. And before that, he attacked Hormuz in Iran. This was all in his attempt to completely control the spice trade, to have a full monopoly on spices. Afonso de Albuquerque had the nickname Afonso the Terrible because he literally would use terrorism to get what he wanted.
This use of terror will bring great things to your obedience without the need to conquer them.
For 6 days, they attacked Melacca. They looted, they burnt down people's homes, they knocked down religious structures, they killed and imprisoned thousands of people. Part of the people who were attacking included a 29-year-old Magellan. Before he tried to circumnavigate the globe, first he helped with the attack over here. That is a fun fact you don't really learn about in school. As mentioned, Afonso hated Muslims, really hated them. And one of the big reasons for that is that the majority of traders that would be bringing spices to Europe were actually coming from the Middle East. Afonso believed that it was Portugal's God-given right to take control of the spice trade. So because of that, he saw Muslims as the worst enemy.
By taking Melacca, we could close the straits, so that never again would Muslims be able to bring their spices by this route. I am very sure that if this Melacca trade is taken out of their hands, Cairo and Mecca will be completely lost.
What a jerk. So, one of the things that Afonso was especially known for was destroying mosques and cemeteries. He did this to terrorize Muslims. There used to be a huge mosque here in Melacca, and presumably he knocked down the Grand Mosque of Melacca, and he used the rubble from that mosque, as well as everything else he knocked down, to build this. This is the iconic site of Melacca, and I am filming this right now very early in the morning because pretty soon this is going to be mobbed with tourists. A lot of people come to Melacca and they all want to see this place. This is a famosa. It was from here that they controlled the spice trade. This is only one small part of Famosa. It's all that's left. There have been a lot of people colonizing this area. First it was the Portuguese, then it was the Dutch, then it was the English. And when the English took over, they knocked the majority of this down, but they kept this gate. But it used to be a huge compound, and it needed to be, in order to protect the Portuguese from people who didn't want them there. They, from here, controlled the spice trade. So they blocked off the Strait of Malacca. They destabilized all trade going through this area, tried to put it in their hands instead, and from here they also organized expeditions to find out where spices were coming from, including nutmeg. They went on an expedition and figured out where it was coming from. The Banda Islands in Indonesia. And I'm going to go there next, but getting a little thirsty here, so I'm going to go back to Penang for a minute, have some juice, and then we're going to go.
One of the most widely used preparations for nutmeg fruit is a juice. In the area that I was in, nutmeg juice was for sale at roadside markets, at restaurants, and in cafes. The juice being sold is not a mass-marketed product. It is either made on site or by a neighboring business. Often, this is poured out from an unmarked bottle, like a non-alcoholic moonshine. However, I did find one company that was selling it commercially. This one you can find at convenience stores throughout the country. That would be the easiest way to try nutmeg juice, but I wanted to see how it was made. So I asked my new friend Jenny if she would show me how it's done.
Yes, this one is fresh nutmeg juice.
Okay.
We got two types today. We got one, this one is concentrate, and this one is fresh. Okay?
Just 1 glass of water,
Yeah.
and about half a fruit.
I think it's enough.
Very high-tech blender. There you go.
Just blend it.
So you're just adding a little simple syrup. Okay. Fresh as can be, straight off the tree, blended, little sugar, and that and water, and that's all. Oh, that's really refreshing. It's mild, citrusy. The sweetness is nice. It kind of like counteracts the little bit of astringency that I had earlier. It's like if you took a little bit of very fresh nutmeg and put it in a little bit of lemonade. And is it something that both adults and children like?
Yeah.
Or the kids drink this and they're happy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The kid more prefer this.
Kids like this one?
Yes.
There is actually another way of preparing nutmeg juice that gives it a very different flavor. For this, the nutmeg is boiled down into a concentrate.
So this is already sweetened.
Yes.
So this is like a syrup.
You just add in water.
Oh, it's very different So like this reminded me a little bit of like lemonade. This reminds me of iced tea, like an Arnold Palmer. Like a little bit citrusy, a little bit like tea, but also a little bit of spice in there. I can't say I like one over the other though, because they're so different. Well, Jenny, thank you so much for sharing the nutmeg juice with me and showing me the process of how you make it. I've had nutmeg before years ago, and I didn't know what I was doing. Oh. To see how it's done properly here in Penang is really a treat. So thank you so much.
You are welcome.
I had nutmeg juice many times on this trip, and what surprised me most about it is that each time that I had it, it tasted different. I got flavors of citrus, ginger, Coca-Cola, bay leaves, tea tree oil, pine needles, apples. I'm not sure if it tasted different because of how they were making it, or if I was picking up on things that I didn't notice before. Probably a bit of both. But my main takeaway from this is that nutmeg fruit has a very complex flavor. Indonesia is the world's largest archipelagic state. It is made up of over 18,000 islands. Of those islands, 1,027 of them refer to the Maluku Islands, also known as the Spice Islands. The Moluccas are not just known for nutmeg and mace, but also cloves, which are grown on these islands here. But that's a different story. Of the 1,027 Maluku Islands, only 11 of them refer to the Banda Islands. And out of those 11 Bandanese islands, only 5 of them grew nutmeg. Lanthor, also known as Banda Besar, Neira, Ai, Run, and Razangain, which is today known as Hatta Island. Navigating to one of these islands was like finding one of 5 needles in a haystack. Lucky for the Portuguese, while they were sacking Melacca, they found a detailed navigational map. Afonso de Albuquerque detailed this finding in a letter to the King of Portugal. It seems to me, sir, that this was the best thing I have ever seen. Your Highness can truly see the course your ships must take to the Clove Islands, where the gold mines lie, and the islands of Java and Banda. Portugal sent 3 ships on an expedition from Malacca in order to find the source of nutmeg, and in 1512 they landed on the Banda Islands. These 5 small islands were now exposed. They went from being hidden amongst 18,000 islands in the Indonesian archipelago to being the center of hundreds of years of conflict. And this is all because of nutmeg. In order to get from Malacca to the Banda Islands, the Portuguese would have gone on a long and dangerous 40-day journey by ship. How I got to the Banda Islands was far less direct, but a lot faster. I went by bus from Malacca to Kuala Lumpur, flew to Bali in Indonesia, then I went onwards to Kalimantan in Indonesian Borneo. From there, I took a flight to Ambon, which is the largest city in the Maluku Islands, and then finally I took a speedboat the rest of the way. And that boat ride, by the way, was one of the most terrifying things that I have ever experienced.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Waterproof? I hope so. I hope the camera's waterproof. Must find the nutmeg. I hope you all appreciate the things that I do for this channel, everybody. And might I say, it's totally worth it. Smoke is a good sign. So I've been sitting up on the deck because I wanted to get a shot of the island as we arrived. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, because look at what it looks like at this deck. I'm under a little bit of awning right now, but that's where I was sitting. I don't think I'll be able to get the shot, unfortunately. I'll put a photo up or something. Relaxing, huh? Yeah. Very nice. Pleasant cruise. Banda. There are the Banda Islands. Oh my god.
God created the world, Banda for the nutmeg, clove for Maluku, sandalwood for Tino, cinnamon for Sri Lanka, and pepper for India. You can find only in the world the nutmeg tree at the time in Banda Island.
I'm in Banda, Neira. This is the main island in the Banda Islands. This is where the harbor is. This is where you're gonna go. This is where you start your journey if you come to the Banda Islands. And I've just gotten here and I am enchanted. It is just incredibly beautiful. The scenery around, all the nature, incredible. The buildings here are just like a look into the past. You get to see glimpses of the colonial period. There's also bits of history, like everywhere. You see the ruins of the forts that were built here, and where the spice trade was happening. That's it's all just out in the open. You can go and you can walk around it. And also the people. The people have been so incredibly kind and welcoming here. Everywhere I've gone, I've been greeted with a smile or a hello. And everyone has been so nice, so generous, so sweet. Today, 22,000 people call the Banda Islands home. Most of them are here on Banda Neira, I believe. Way back in the 16th, 17th century, there were 15,000 people that were here. This might be a good time to mention that getting to the Banda Islands is pretty difficult. In order to get here, you can take a Pelni boat, which are giant cruise ship kind of boats that they have just like open with mats that you can sleep on. It's very slow. The quickest one is 8 hours, but sometimes they can take 14 or even longer. There is a fast boat that goes once a week, but it's relatively new. It might not be running by the time you watch this. And there is an airstrip, and I am walking on that airstrip right now. Yeah, plane's not running. Plane's not running. I think during some seasons the plane does run, but it's not very often, just very infrequent. And it's a small plane, only fits 12 people. So, and you can't book it online. You have to like show up, hope that there's seats available, and they'll only allocate certain number of seats to foreigners. Kids are walking on here too. I'm not the only one. Feels like I shouldn't be here. So this is actually pretty comforting that there's someone else walking on here. None of those three options actually go every day. The fast boat right now is once a week. The flights, when they are running, I think are twice a week. And the Pelni boats are random. It's usually about twice a week. I gave myself a week ahead and a week after, just to make sure that I would have enough time to get here and get out.
On further inspection, you're not supposed to go in there. I was walking down a path and it just like led into it. But I guess if you go to the main entrance here, it is like all blocked off. Whoops, sorry. So I'll just do my due diligence and say, if you come to the Banda Islands, don't walk on the airstrip. You might get run over by a plane. And if anyone from this airport is watching, I apologize. You might want to close that gate though. I'm at a nutmeg plantation right now on Banda Besar, the largest island that is just south of Banda Neira. Banda Besar is still a major producer of nutmeg. You know, Indonesia is the #1 producer of nutmeg in the world. Even today, they produce 50% of all nutmeg, and Banda is one of the major areas that produces it. Nutmeg is one of the big industries here in the Banda Islands, but it's not the only industry. The others are fishing, very popular fishing area, and tourism. Tourists like me who are interested in culture and nutmeg come here, but mainly diving and snorkeling. There's supposed to be like incredible diving and snorkeling in the islands here. In the past though, their economy centered around nutmeg and mace and not much else. They dedicated pretty much all of their usable land to nutmeg. They did trade cloves, but that was not cloves that they grew themselves. The Bandanese people were very entrepreneurial, okay, so they were not, they saw that people wanted cloves, so they got cloves, and then they traded it to those people at a markup. So much of their land was dedicated to growing nutmeg that they didn't actually have enough food. So in order to survive, in order to eat, the Bandanese people had to trade. The staple food for the Bandanese people long ago was sago palm. So sago is like the inside of the trunk of a sago palm or cycad. And I believe the food that they would have eaten was this gluey kind of porridge. So how you're supposed to do this is you're given these kind of chopstick tweezer looking things like this. You put them inside and you kind of like mix it like this. I don't know what this does. I think maybe it thickens it a little bit, maybe. And then you put this in the soup. I'm a little scared of it, won't lie. I only live once. It's alright. I don't think the sago actually has any flavor to it. It is just something that's meant to like expand in your stomach. It feels like something that is very filling. I was worried that the texture of this would be like a booger. And it's not. The consistency of it is like somewhere between a pudding and a jello. It's a little bit more firm than boogers. You know how I said earlier that in Europe they were using spices as currency because that was so valued. Well, in Banda, like, they had spices. They had spices. Something that was more valuable to them was food. So their currency was actually sago. So we've got all kinds of different cookies made with sago. How nutmeg production is done today is, young men usually climb the trees and they have this little stick that they use to pull it down. So it's like a little bamboo basket with a hole in it. So somebody might climb the tree with one of these to collect it by hand, like a short one. But then there's also ones with a long pole attached, so you can do it from the ground. In the past, it was actually women who would collect the fruits. They would go and they would collect the fruit, and the spices would be prepared. So they would strip off the nutmeg flesh, take the mace out, dry the individual components, and they would trade that. Make it look so easy, so fast. And they actually did also trade the fruit. I'm not sure how popular it was, in Europe, but at least on a smaller scale, they would trade the fruit. They would trade it preserved. And nutmeg pickles Also, still popular today.
It's a little bit translucent and really crunchy. Yeah, when you pickle nutmeg, it still retains its texture and it retains a lot of its flavor. It's really powerful, but it has mellowed out in a way that is good. It gets rid of that astringency and it gets rid of a lot of that harsh, resiny sort of taste. It's really satisfying to chew on this because it's like, it fights you a bit.
So nutmeg, like this one right here, very... Excuse me. So nutmeg was of course a very important tree here, but it is not the only important tree in the Banda Islands. There is one other. There's one other, and that is this big guy right here. This is a kanari tree, and kanari produces a fruit that has a nut inside, and that nut is widely consumed here. Like, people use this in a lot of cooking. You can make oil out of it. People eat the fresh nut, they dry it out and eat the dried nut, and they're really, really tasty. They have a very mild flavor, but they're very rich. It tastes like an almond, but fattier. It also is a very functional tree in the production of nutmeg because, you know, we're on an island, and this island gets a lot of wind. So the kanari trees will actually help stop the wind from coming in and destroying nutmeg trees. And when it's very sunny here and very hot, these act as shade trees. Like, they're huge. Like, look at that big tree. Gigantic tree. So these things tower over the area and provide shade to the to nutmeg trees and protect them from a hot summer. Very, very valuable. And what's cool is that this was... Whoa! Jeez. So the canary and the nutmeg work side by side with each other, and that is how it used to be done way back when, and it's still done that way today. Nutmeg grows here all year round, and the Banda Islands are especially conducive for nutmeg to grow due to a variety of reasons, the climate, and also this guy, the volcanic soil that you have in the islands here due to Banda's volcano helps the trees to grow. So this area is specifically great for growing these trees.
Delicious as it is, the fruit is not a commonly traded commodity. And with literally tons of spices being sold, the majority of that fruit is left to the locals to use. So, what do they do with it? I asked my guide Denny about how people in the Banda Islands use the fruit, and he told me about one of the most widely consumed dishes.
You know, the kuah asam, we catch the small pieces in the sea, yeah, and then we will take the meat of the nutmeg and then we mix, and after that we boil it together.
Oh, okay, I see. The nutmeg meat, though.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hello.
So I don't eat fish, but lucky for me, I managed to find a version of this without fish at a restaurant.
This is a vegetable soup, or you can get it with meat also, but the nutmeg is used to flavor it. So there's big chunks of fresh nutmeg fruit inside this soup. You get that kind of like piney sort of flavor, that like citrus rind taste, that spiciness, a little bit of resiny taste. It's like a very powerful flavor. Most ways nutmeg is used seems to be sweet. So nutmeg jam, nutmeg candy, syrup, juice. This is going full savory, and it's good. It's good. It works. When the Portuguese first showed up on the shores of the Banda Islands, at first, the Bandanese people, they welcomed them. They were like, hey, traders, great, sure, we'll trade with you, we'll trade with anybody, of course, come on in. Very welcoming. But as you would imagine, over time the Portuguese started to meddle a little bit. They started messing with their trade. They didn't like that. So whenever the Portuguese kind of like overstepped their bounds, the Bandanese fought them tooth and nail. There's reports of them fighting a lot through history. There's a report of them Portuguese being like, hey, you know, sign this paper, and the Bandanese like stealing their ships. You know, they were tough. They're tough people, so they did not want any of that. And because of that, there is no Portuguese fort here, except kind of. Where I am walking around right now is Fort Nassau. They only managed to get the foundation built. They only built part of it, and then the Bandanese made them stop. What I'm in right now is a fort that was created, but was created by colonists who came later, who I will get into later in the video. But it is interesting to note that the Portuguese, try as they might, they never managed to do what they really set out to do here. The Bandanese people wouldn't let them.
Needless to say, things weren't going according to plan for the Portuguese. And besides the Bandanese being tough mothers, there were two even bigger reasons why Portugal was not able to gain control. First, one of Portugal's main strategies was to coerce whoever was in charge of a land to agree to their monopoly. Well, this didn't work for the Bandanese. They had no ruler. How their society worked is it was broken up into separate communities, each with a chief known as an orang kaya. Literally meaning rich man, the orang kaya were respected elders that had gained their status due to the amount of nutmeg that they grew. They held power and influence and were representatives for their domains. For important matters that would involve the Banda Islands as a whole, the orang kaya of different regions would meet with each other and come to an agreement. They looked out for the good of their community, and naturally, they did not all agree to Portugal's demands. Second of all, it's important to note that although Portugal was the first European nation to discover the Banda Islands, they weren't the first ones in the world. Banda had regular visitors from Java, China, Malaysia, the Middle East, and other Indonesian islands. Sometimes traders even settled in Banda and took local wives. Marrying between different trading communities was often used to establish bonds, so the Bandanese had business relationships throughout other parts of Asia. The Bandanese had a successful system, and the most essential part of it was trade. As mentioned, they didn't grow enough food for themselves, so they needed to trade in order to eat. Portugal may have managed to reduce the amount that the Bandanese traded with others, but they could not completely stop it.
I'm so enamored by the mountain here, but I have to be very careful while I'm walking here at the fort because there's cows here. I've like very nearly stepped in cow poop like many times while walking through here. For about 100 years, the Portuguese and the Bandanese had a complicated relationship. In fact, while this was going on, Portugal was engaging in battle after battle after battle after battle throughout the world, and whenever there was a battle in the Maluku Islands, the Bandanese would support the other side. They would send warships with their people to support the efforts going against the Portuguese. Yeah, not a very healthy relationship. And towards the very end of the 16th century, the Portuguese, they backed off. They left the Banda Islands. Why? Well, I'm not gonna pretend like I know the full military history here. I'm not a historian, but I mean, kind of makes sense. Bandanese did not want them there. That's a reason. Another reason, though, is that they, at this time, had been fighting the Dutch. And the Dutch were trying to also establish monopolies through the area, and that kind of scared them away too, I would imagine. So, end of the 16th century, the Portuguese left, and that is when the Dutch showed up. And that is also when things start to get a bit ugly. Good morning, everybody. It is breakfast time, and I have with me a canary pancake with nutmeg jam on it, and also nutmeg coffee. It's got the nutmeg seed in it, not the fruit, not the maize. That's a lot of nutmeg. That's a lot of nutmeg. Whoa, ho, ho, ho. That is a lot of nutmeg. That is actually a concerning amount of nutmeg. You know, like nutmeg contains a compound called myristicin, and myristicin is good for a few things. It's an insecticide, but it's also an hallucinogenic. So if you know, probably for someone my size, like one big seed of nutmeg is probably enough to have an effect on me. And I'd say that this cup of coffee has like half a seed in it. It is that strong. So 1 cup, fine. But if I were to have a second cup, I might start seeing elephants or something. Honestly, I'm not like the biggest fan of the coffee throughout the area here. I'm being totally honest. Like what I say, I don't like it. But I like the nutmeg coffee more. You know, it's kind of like in the past when people would use spices in wine and stuff that they didn't like the taste of. It covers it up, it gives it a nice flavor, and I'm kind of feeling that experience right now. So, the pancake. This pancake has canary nuts mixed into the batter, and then I put nutmeg jam on top of it. The canary nuts don't have a ton of flavor, but they do provide a nice little texture, and they provide butteriness. And the jam is excellent. I really like nutmeg jam. It's like apple pie and Coca-Cola. It's got a very interesting flavor to it. And it's kind of surprising that the jam is not more common. Nutmeg seeds and the mace are selected, but so much of the fruit, I think, gets thrown away. Or it's just used locally. But really, I'd say like making jam out of it, that would be something that would be popular on a global scale. Sometimes I'm traveling and I find a fruit and I try it, and I'm like, why don't people eat this? It makes no sense. And with nutmeg, I mean, it's perishable. You can't eat the fruit. But the jam, you've got no excuse. This is very, very good, and unfortunately, very difficult to find. Even in Penang, where I was, the juice people drink, but the jam is not super common. But here in the Banda Islands, like, they know what's up. Like this, excellent. When you come into the Banda Islands, whether you're flying in, taking the boat in, swimming in, you will inevitably see the icon of the area here, Gunung Api, Banda's volcano. Gunung Api literally means volcano. If you Google that, several things will come up. But right now, I am climbing Banda's Gunung Api. There are more active volcanoes. This is really hard. There are more active volcanoes here in Indonesia than anywhere else in the world. And this one is also active. Over the past 500 years, there are records of how often this volcano erupted. Once every 20 years, on average, it erupts. As I film this, it is 2024. The last time this volcano erupted was in 1988. better walk gently. So one of my sources for this video was the Nutmeg's Curse by Amitav Ghosh, and what he pointed out, it's a very fun fact, is that volcanoes are very important in Indonesia. Culturally, they're very important. It was not just, you know, a mountain that is occasionally doing this scientific thing. People saw it as sacred. So when volcanoes erupted, especially when it's not like all the time, like every 20 years, it would have been seen as like a great sign, a great omen. Something really important has happened, or it's going to happen. Well, in 1599, this volcano erupted. Shortly after this volcano erupted, the Dutch appeared on the shore in the Banda Islands. Imagine everybody wondering, what does it mean? Probably people thought maybe there's a connection here. Maybe this is what the volcano was telling us. Can't say for sure, but it was definitely a very important moment when the volcano erupted. And it was a very important moment shortly after when the Dutch showed up. So, what does it mean? So, the really tricky thing about climbing this volcano is this rock. It's real loose. Whoa! Almost falling right there. Okay, so you gotta be very, very careful, especially if you're filming with one hand and trying to balance with the other. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna put this camera away. I'll see you at the top. Hey.
Are you okay?
Oh yeah, never been better. So I thought that I had it hard. This is a very difficult trek, and I've been like downing water like nobody's business, almost out. But it's Ramadan, so everybody here, you're not drinking water, right? You're doing this dry. You're a stronger man than me. I'm on my second bottle. Check this out. So Fort Nassau is the fort that Portugal tried to create, but were stopped by the Bandanese. That is right above my finger there. There's a little bit of wall left, but it's just ruins. So that ended up not being a spot where the Dutch really wanted to keep their fort. So they started there, they started building it, and then they ended up moving their fort to this impressive guy up there on the hill. So this was built on the hill, that way people would be able to see if ships were coming. Forts here in the Banda Islands were multi-purpose. They did a lot of things. They would protect people, they would be used as a vantage point to see if ships are coming, they would conduct business here. Spice-related business, I'm sure, happened at this fort. But another thing that's very important for the purposes of my video are, this is where they would store the nutmeg. You know, nutmeg was worth a lot of money. They want to make sure it was safe, so they would keep it inside the walls of their fortresses. So I'm not sure for certain, but I think I found the nutmeg storage room for the main fort here in the Banda Islands, and I'm going to take you in there. It is pretty dank in here. So there's one room right here, one room right here. I can pretty much guarantee that this room is the storage room for nutmeg. No one has told me. However, when you go inside this room, I know there's nothing in here except cockroaches and mold, but this room smells like nutmeg strongly. It has a strong nutmeg scent, and I can just guarantee that at one point in history, maybe hundreds of years ago, there was a big mound of nutmeg right here, because I can still smell it. Just this room. When you go in this room here, I don't smell anything. This mold. When I go in here, ugh, this one smells kind of like pee. I think somebody's been peeing in here. But no, this room right here, I can guarantee you, was where they were storing the nutmeg. And it's so cool that I could still smell it. This here is a VOC symbol. Maybe a little hard to make out because it's original, but there's a V, an O, and a C. And this stands for the Dutch East India Company. When the VOC was formed, Portugal and the Netherlands were at war, or at least they were fighting a lot at this time. Portugal sanctioned the Netherlands from purchasing spices. So the VOC attempting to get a monopoly on spices was, to do two things. One, to regain this valuable commodity that they were no longer able to get from the Portuguese, and also to hit the Portuguese where it hurt. The Portuguese were under the orders of the king. They were following orders. They were doing what they needed to do. The Dutch East India Company, they basically were able to make their own decisions. They were given permission by the Dutch government to wage wars, colonize places. They were able to kill, enslave. They even had their own currency. They were able to do a lot with no need to ask the king for help. So because of that, they managed to get like a stranglehold in this area, and they made a lot of money. During the time that they were around, they made the equivalent of about 8 trillion, trillion with a T, US dollars, making them like the most successful company of all time. By colonizing, by killing, by enslaving, by taking control of this very valuable commodity, they changed the world.
When the VOC showed up, the Bandanese once again were welcoming. They believed that the Dutch were there to save them from the Portuguese. But then the Dutch began to show their real colors. They started to build a fort on top of the foundation that the Portuguese had already started. And when the Orang Kaya protested, the Dutch ignored them. Tensions began to rise, and it was agreed that the Dutch and the Bandanese should have a meeting to discuss things. The Bandanese, as we've established, were tough mothers. So when the Dutch arrived to the meeting, the Bandanese ambushed them. They attacked and killed 46 members of the VOC and gave the rest of them a very clear message. Don't f with us. Of those who escaped with their lives was a man named Jan Pieterszoon Koen. If Koen was killed on that fateful day, the history of these islands would have been very different. Because soon after that ambush, he was appointed Governor General, and he wanted revenge. There is nothing in the world that gives one a better right than power. Despair not. Spare your enemies not, for God is with us. The Portuguese failed to establish a nutmeg monopoly because it was impossible to do this with how the Bandanese society functioned. Koen saw the same problems, but he saw a solution. Eliminate that society. and replace the Bandanese with slaves. The Dutch ordered the Bandanese to set fire to their homes and give themselves up peacefully. Some of them escaped, but most of them didn't believe what they were being told to do, and they ignored it.
The Dutch had hired a bunch of Japanese ronin, so mercenaries, samurai, basically. These Japanese ronin beheaded the Orang Kaya. They put their heads on spikes outside Fort Nassau to be a symbol of terror for the other inhabitants of the islands, and the bodies of the Orang Kaya were thrown down this well, which still exists today.
That well
Yes.
was not just any well, it's a sacred
Yes,
well.
sacred well.
And they were putting the bodies
Yes.
in there to be desecrating it.
Desecrating, yes.
Yeah, oh. So it's,
You know what happened after they put all the body in that one? The Banda have to get disaster after they kill Bandanese people. Many happened, tsunami coming, earthquake, eruption, almost different every year. It seemed like the Banda Island crying.
Tragically, the Banda Islands, this once thriving area with over 15,000 people, was reduced down to only 1,000. The survivors of this were then enslaved and then either sold or forced to work in the nutmeg plantations. Since they were the only ones that knew how to farm nutmeg, they were forced to teach other slaves from other areas how to do it.
I am on a speedboat right now, and I am heading to that island. That island is Rune. It is a inhabited island. It is only about 1.5 miles at its longest point. This is a small island, but it is a very important island. Okay, I'm going back in the cabin now. I made it! This is the island of Rune. And the island of Rune is incredibly significant in history because this was an English settlement. See, the Dutch, they had control of all the islands here except for this one. In 1603, the inhabitants of Rune made an agreement with Britain. They said, "We will swear allegiance to the crown. We will allow you to settle here. That's fine. You can have nutmeg, sure. Just keep the Dutch away from us." So the English agreed, and now they had access to an island with nutmeg. Rune is small, but it produces a lot of nutmeg, so this was actually fairly significant. So Britain now has a source of nutmeg, and the Dutch were not happy about that. They wanted a monopoly. They wanted full control of all the nutmeg. So they fought the English for decades. For decades, there was constant fighting over this island. Things came to an agreement because in 1667, these two nations signed a treaty. In this agreement, England agreed to give this island, the island of Rune, that I am standing on right now, all 1.5 miles of it, they agreed to give this island to the Dutch in exchange for an island that the Dutch had just acquired in the Americas. So the island that the Dutch offered didn't have any nutmeg on it, but it was bigger. It was about 13 miles long. And they were calling this island New Amsterdam. And when the English took New Amsterdam, they decided to change the name to something that was a little bit closer to where they came from. They changed it to New York. So yes, about 350 years ago and some change, this island was exchanged for Manhattan, where I'm from. I mean, I'm from New York, I'm from Queens, but close enough. And it is just wild to imagine that this exchange happened. And I can't help but wonder the parallel universe that exists where that exchange did not happen. What would Manhattan look like if the Dutch owned it? Instead of pretzels on the street, would there be stroopwafels? I don't know. I don't know. But it's like amazing to think that such a big change happened, and it's all because of nutmeg. The English, they still had a bone to pick with the Dutch, okay? So during the Napoleonic War, England managed to briefly gain control of the Banda Islands, okay? So this is the 18th century. There's fighting, there's stuff, things happen, battles, wars, whatever. They're gonna kind of fast forward through that and go to a treaty being signed. So England gave the Banda Islands back to the Dutch, okay? So Dutch had it, English had it, Dutch has it again. England's like, oh, okay, bye. Enjoy your islands. But they had an ace up their sleeve. They took thousands of nutmeg seedlings on their boats and they brought them to other colonies that they had. They brought nutmeg to Grenada, Sri Lanka, and Malaysia. The reason why nutmeg is in Penang, where I started this adventure, is because of that. Because Britain played a trick on the Dutch. After this happened, nutmeg was now much easier to access. It was being grown in several places, not just here, not just in the Banda Islands. And because of that, the monopoly that the Dutch had crumbled. It fell apart. The value of nutmeg dropped significantly, and now it was over.
This is probably a good time to mention that the external microphone for my camera gave out during my last couple of days in the Banda Islands. I have no idea how that could have happened. Luckily, the audio would go in and out, so I managed to capture a few moments on my last couple of days, including this one.
Wants a little human company. So yeah, every evening I come down here, I sit in the square, and just kind of like watch life go by. It's Ramadan, and I believe around this time is when fasting ends. So people are like kind of coming to life. It's usually my favorite part of a trip. It's not like climbing volcanoes, it's just finding a peaceful place to like hang out, have a drink, watch life go by. And this has been my place for that, and I've been coming here every night. And it's nice. Yeah, just kind of a moment to reflect back on this trip. And it has been an incredible trip. The Banda Islands are very difficult to get to. But absolutely worth it. Absolutely worth it. I kind of like that it's hard to get to. It makes it a little bit more special. There's really like not a lot of people around, locals and tourists alike. Very chill place, and I've been really enjoying it.
Oh, I'm sorry to wake you. You're very comfortable. Okay, I'll let you sleep.
Really want some treats. Okay, I got you. Good? You poor little thing. Here, have some more. Enjoy. I am in Jakarta right now, and come with me. I'm gonna take you somewhere cool. The history of Jakarta is intricately tied to the history of the spice trade, okay? Because this was a hotspot for all those European powers that were coming over here. And we're gonna do like a nutshell version of this to like my basic understanding of it, okay? It goes back to the Portuguese, okay? After the Portuguese seized Melacca, way back then, and they started going on expeditions to try to find out where the spices were. They came here. They came to Jakarta. They established a port. They established a presence. They were there, and then they were kicked out. Fast forward a bit to the Dutch, okay? The Dutch, as I said before, they went to the shores of the Banda Islands in 1599. Just before that, they came here to Jakarta. On their heels were the British. The British and them were not getting along. However, they both wanted a monopoly on spices, and they saw this as a strategic area. So they both set up shop here. Just imagine, like that would have been a very awkward period of time, I'm sure. But not for long, because eventually the Dutch kicked the British out. Maybe like the British ate some of the cold pizza from the Dutch's fridge or something. I don't know. There's a weird roommate situation going on. And eventually the British, they left. They left. The Dutch seized the area. They built a big wall. That wall. This is all Koen, by the way. The same guy who ordered to kill all the Bandanese. This is all his doing, okay? He seized Jakarta, changed its name to Batavia, and they put this big wall around. The majority of the city wall was knocked down, but this was, at one time, a big wall that would have surrounded the entire city. The Dutch East India Company fell apart. It fell apart in 1799, something like that. But the Netherlands still has all these colonies, okay? Just because the Dutch East India Company left didn't mean that the Netherlands also left. They still had the Banda Islands as a colony. They still had Jakarta, or Batavia, I'm sorry, as a colony. So why did they leave? Okay, so fast forward again now to like the 1940s. The value of spices is still not great. They're not making a whole lot of money from these colonies anymore. Also, the economy in the Netherlands itself, not a colony, but just the Netherlands, was not doing so hot either. And then, World War II. World War II happened, okay? We're talking 1940s. So in 1942, the Japanese came to Jakarta, or Batavia, I'm sorry. Japanese come over here, they kick the Dutch out, and that pretty much ends it. That pretty much like is the death nail to the colonialism in this area by the Dutch. And then when World War II ended, the power was given to Indonesia. And by the way, like this place is, no one comes here. No one comes here. All around this area is just like parking for trucks. But it's really cool, and it's within walking distance of the upkept colonial area, the Dutch Square.
So now all the nutmeg plantation, the Bandanese people, they running themselves. That's why you can see right now Banda people, they get more free and more happy. And every island you can see they have a nice house, a concrete house, they have a television, good tile, washing machine, IC condition and everything. Yeah. It seems like we're back again before the colonialism come in Banda.
I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Although I've been telling this story as if I've been going from place to place, in order to make this video, I actually went to Southeast Asia twice. You may have noticed that in some parts I'm wearing glasses and some I'm not. Well, that's because between these two trips, I got LASIK eye surgery. On the first trip, I only went to Penang in order to visit the nutmeg farm. That was going to be it, but then when I got home from that trip, I started researching the history of nutmeg in order to give some fun facts about why it grows in Penang. And instead, I was disturbed by what I found out. What happened in the Banda Islands was terrible, but that wasn't the part that disturbed me. It was the casualness about how this tragedy was being told. This history is all too often told from the perspective of the colonists. And in this case, that history was summed up with a wave of the hand. They were killed, the Dutch were victorious, and now we have nutmeg. This fact was not fun at all. Going to places with a dark history can help you feel the weight of what actually happened. So that's why I went to Southeast Asia for a second time. I wanted to try and understand what really happened there 400 years ago. And by going there, I found out that those history books were out of date. Maybe the VOC got what they wanted at the time, but in the long run, they are the ones who left. And although the colonist leaders were once seen as heroes in their home countries, today many people are seeing them as the monsters that they actually were. The people who live in the Banda Islands are different now. They are the descendants of the slaves that were brought in to work in the nutmeg plantations. They come from many different backgrounds, but today, they proudly call themselves Bandanese. And once again, the nutmeg trade is good to them. So why do I still have a bad taste in my mouth? No matter how much nutmeg I use, it's not enough to cover it up. Because nutmeg wasn't the only thing that was stolen by the colonists. In the Banda Islands, the language and traditions of the original people has been lost. I think I have something that might help though. I learned a lot by going to the Banda Islands, and out of everything I learned, I finally have a fun fact to share with you. Something that's not usually mentioned. Just how fun is this fact? Well,
here we go again. Third time's the charm. Well, everybody, I am on another boat. This time, I'm heading to Kei Besar. That's right behind me there. So, Kei Besar is a very special place because, you know, in 1621, when the Dutch attacked the Bandanese people, a lot of them escaped. Kei Besar today has the largest population of the original Bandanese still today. They're still around. I've seen towns that have cats everywhere or dogs everywhere. Here, there are goats. Nice jump.
the Kei Islands are about 200 miles away from the Banda Islands. The most visited is Kei Kecil, which is growing in popularity as a beach getaway for tourists. Kei Besar, however, receives very few visitors. It is home to roughly 40,000 people, and of that population, there are around 4,000 people whose ancestors originally came from the Banda Islands. They live in two regions that have names that reflect back to that history, Banda Alat and Banda Eli. However, the communities here do not call themselves Bandanese. They are the Wandan, named for their ancestors' original name for the Banda Islands.
Okay. I think I'm about to meet somebody very important.
This is called Rumaseng.
Rumasai.
Yeah, Rumaseng.
What does that mean?
Rumaseng was like an old house. You see the sign?
Yes.
It's like sign of customs.
Meniken Wandan Elat, at Melang Amar. Yokan alam Sanbe.
Say Jared.
Jared.
Jadi, kamu malah ngoy monosa. Dari sana datang bikin apa?
I'm here to learn about the original Bandanese people and what their life is like today.
Aknalang Abdullah Suat.
In Kei Besar, there are three main languages that are spoken: Indonesian, Keiese, and Bandanese. And many of the Wandan people speak all three. Bandanese is especially important to them. It is used for official meetings and also functions as a social and ethnic boundary between their villages and others. This separation has allowed the language to survive despite them being a minority group on the island. Wandan people escaped to other areas too, but in those areas this social boundary wasn't established, so the language and customs there have been lost. Families may remember and pass down that heritage, but they have otherwise integrated into the larger community. My new friend Wazna, for instance, her family is a descendant of the Banda Islands, but her ancestors escaped to Seram.
My grandfathers will tell us about the story. So he was like, you know what, from long time ago, your grandparents ran away from Banda Neira because of Dutch coming and then destroyed our village, our island, and then we have to escape from them. My grandparents have a lot of daughters. They are beautiful daughter. So he spread the kids, her daughter, to escape from the Dutch. That's a lesson to know our identity, our culture, our ethnic, and the reason why we're here. The historical is the big lessons, the big experience that we didn't see it, but we can take that from our mothers or maybe our parents' story, and we save that in our memory to share that there are kids, so reminding them to, and maybe to more respectful for the spices, because the spices destroys our country.
To this day, the Wandan people are known for being merchants and craftsmen. Banda Eli is especially well known for its traditional crafts, so I went there next to see if I can find any.
There's no tenders here. You gotta walk through the stones in order to get on this little boat. Jeez. At least I'm not the only one nearly falling. Ready? Yeah. How long of a ride is this? 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, 2 hours, maybe 3. No, you don't know. Okay, we'll find out. This episode is not sponsored by Dramamine, but I kind of wish it was. Can't say it wasn't a slice of heaven. All right. Banda Eli is the largest community of the Wandan people. There are several different villages that comprise this area. I was just admiring the owner of this house's basket here. It's a traditional basket that the Wandan people use. And she said, like, oh, you can buy them up here. This is the Basket Explorer today. Basket update. We did not see any for sale. All those shops are closed because it's too early. But we're waiting for the boat here. And Tino, my guide here, he asked an older lady if she knew if there's anywhere close by we can get one, and she said, I have one, and she walked away to go and get it. So I might be buying hers. Oh, beautiful. Word has gotten out. There's an active buyer in the neighborhood. So a few more people have come by with handicrafts from the area here. This is a pot that is used for water. What would you like other people to know about the Wandan people today?
Pada zaman orang tua datang batas saya punya bapak dan mama itu orang Wandan itu masih dulu dalam bikin bentuk suram belanga dari tanah liat itu. Bahwa itu tandanya Wandan masih ada.
This was used for collecting nutmeg. The strap here actually goes on your head, so you use the strength of your neck to hold up the basket and put it in. This one is very, very small, so this would be one that like a child would use. And here are a couple of bracelets. These bracelets, you find them throughout the Kei Islands. My guide here, Tino, he said that they have them in his village, but not with this insignia on it. This symboling here is specific to the area.
Things aren't just made for their community, but are also traded with other islands. I was told that these earrings here were made specifically for weddings in the Tanimbar Islands, which are over 100 miles away. The political system for the Wandan is different now. There are still orang kaya, however, this position today doesn't mean what it used to. Instead, today matters are settled by a village chief.
Nama saya Hakim Rahwarin, kepala desa di desa atau di Uhui Tuburlai. Ya, saya di sini memimpin 520 jiwa. Kami bagian daripada masyarakat Wandan atau masyarakat Banda ini. Nah, semua berasal dari Banda Neira, dan alhamdulillah kami bisa hidup berbaur dengan masyarakat di Kei sudah hampir 400 tahun. Kami hidup sebagaimana layaknya masyarakat di Maluku Tenggara, hidup saling membaur, kemudian saling berpartisipasi dalam pembangunan dan kekeluargaan.
There are also kings who represent several groups of villages.
Nama saya dari Latar, anak terutama dari almarhum Haji Langwar Latar.
He's the king of this area?
Yes.
I'm going to be honest, my visit to Kei Besar was not what I thought it would be. I was expecting to just get a few recordings of the original Bandanese language and end this story on a positive note. That's not what happened. I got that recording, but I found out that the Bandanese language is endangered.
Kasih, maksudnya bicara dengan anak-anak di rumah dong pakai bahasa Elat juga.
Iya.
Atau cuma pakai bahasa hari-hari. Oh, jadi anak-anak dong saya pakai bahasa Elat.
Setengah itu baru katanya yang kasar.
Saya boleh begitu, Bang. Harus kasih biasa anak-anak pakai bahasa.
Anak-anak sampai kuliah.
Kids these days don't speak the mother
They don't
language.
speak mother language. They get it, they understand the meaning, but they didn't speak mother language.
Does his children speak the mother tongue?
Karena saya anaknya sudah anak campuran, jadi jarang baru dia pakai bahasa Banda karena mamanya dari Jawa. Maka diprediksi seperti itu. Karena dalam hal perkawinan pencampuran itu.
Kita mengkhawatirkan bahasa ini akan hilang. Untuk itu tahun 2022 kemarin dari kantor bahasa Provinsi Maluku melakukan kegiatan revitalisasi bahasa Wandan di sini dalam rangka untuk bagaimana bisa menyelamatkan generasi dari bahasa ini jangan sampai kemudian dia hilang.
And those cultural practices that I mentioned, they're threatened as well.
Bahwa itu tandanya Wandan masih ada. Budaya itu telah punah karena dengan adanya perkembangan zaman modern, lalu budaya itu dong lepas.
I wanted to show that this dark history is a thing of the past. And although some people that I spoke to saw it that way, others didn't. On more than one occasion, I would ask a simple question, like, what is your name? only to be taken aback by an impassioned response that needed no translation.
So would he mind first introducing himself in the original language?
Aknalan ke jali. Mo fam ralet. Ke ho karena ngondomu. Akasalnya pulau rum.
The culture of the Wandan people is very important to them, and despite all odds, they have managed to keep that culture alive. But some of them are upset, and they feel that the Indonesian and Dutch government should be doing more to acknowledge them.
For people watching who want to know like the reality of the survivors of that history, like what would you tell people?
Karena khusus pemerintah Indonesia dan pemerintah Belanda kan sudah mengakui itu. Yang mengakui maksudnya moyang-moyang kita yang historinya itu kan terpampang di Banda saja, tapi orang itu kan pahlawan, kalau boleh dikatakan pahlawan nasional genosida awal di Indonesia itu.
I started this project just wanting to explain what nutmeg fruit tastes like. I never would have imagined that it would lead to me discussing sensitive ethno-political topics that I know nothing about with the son of a king for a community of people that I only recently learned about. So forgive me for not going into this further. It is far beyond my qualifications and far beyond my capabilities to tell it properly. I do hope, however, that I helped bring some awareness to this incredible community. I started this journey talking about fruit, something that I arguably do know about, and damn it, I'm going to end this journey with fruit. And I had one more question that I needed to know the answer to. After everything, the Dutch attack, their escape, 400 years separated from the Banda Islands, after all of this, do the Wandan people still grow nutmeg? My new friend Wazna made some calls, and pretty soon we were on motorbikes. Then we were in her family's garden, and there, we found it.
She's collecting. This is the nutmeg.
Oh, you just made me very happy. This is not Bandanese nutmeg.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Can you pull it down? Ooh. Oh, there it goes. Okay. All right, it's one of these. It's one of these. It's better than I thought. This is long nutmeg. Long nutmeg is a very rare species related to nutmeg. A different species from nearby West Papua seemed to be more common. But after a few more calls and a few more gardens, there it was.
Can you reach? Ah, so close. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Bandanese nutmeg growing on Kei Besar.
Nutmeg is still being grown by the original Bandanese people. Tough mothers. Well, everybody, I think that is about it. Once again, I'm hanging out, this time in Kei Besar, in a Wandan village, having a drink, watching life go by. I didn't know at the beginning of this adventure that this community still existed, but here they are, going by, living their life, and it's pretty amazing. So thanks for watching, everybody, and I will see you all next time.
Ah.